Hello, everyone. Let's discuss today global warming and climate change. Have you heard these terminologies? Do you think they are the same or not? But before we know the answer, let's talk about the difference of weather and climate. Weather is a short term condition that is changing. It may be sunny today and then rainy in the next few days. It can also change even in minutes or in hours. On the other hand, climate is a more stable condition of weather pattern for a long period of time. Since we know the basic difference between the two, let's go now to the concept of global warming. So, it is the long term gradual increase of global mean temperature near the Earth's surface caused by high concentration of greenhouse gases. And when we say greenhouse gases, these are gaseous components that absorb and emit infrared radiation, contributing to greenhouse effects. Examples of these greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane. And according to our World in data for the year 2018, the sector that contributed the largest greenhouse gas emissions of the Philippines is electricity and heat. Some of the sources or appliances like air conditioners and refrigerators, just to name a few. So let's see this illustration from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration or NASA showing the greenhouse effect. So when the sunlight reaches the Earth, some of it are reflected back into the space, but some of it is being radiated as heat that is absorbed by the greenhouse gases. That makes the Earth warmer. So this slide shows that 1880, where the Earth is a lot cooler, and as the time went by, the bluish Earth turned into reddish, indicating that our Earth is a lot warmer nowadays. Now, this warming at alarming rate is one of the causes of climate change. Climate change is usually defined as long-term variability or variation in the climate system that is attributable to natural causes and anthropogenic activities. One of the causes of climate change is deforestation or the conversion of forest to non-forest land use. Non-forest deforestation can be done through logging, mining, slash and burn agriculture, which is locally known as kaingin, agricultural expansion, conversion to plantation for other crops. So these activities where the trees having the capacity to store carbon are being cut. So it causes what we call carbon emissions. Deforestation is also driven by natural occurrences like landslides. And one main indirect driver of deforestation is the population growth. These activities do not simply cause deforestation, but it oftentimes causes forest degradation, or the impairment of ecosystem services like biodiversity, pest and disease regulation, climate regulation, hazard prevention or reduction, and other regulating, supporting, and cultural services that a forest provides. Even our food production contributes to climate change, from growing the crops when some of the farmers use machineries and fertilizers, then from packaging that cause carbon emissions. Manufacturing is another cause of climate change as it produces large amounts of emissions. Many products are manufactured every day, from plastics, steels, and electronics. Emissions also come from power generation when we generate electricity from burning fossil fuels like coal and oil. So these are some of the very few causes of climate change. But the question is, as human, why should we care? Based on the Climate Risk Index from 1996 to 2015, the Philippines is ranked as the fifth of the most affected country by extreme weather events. It intensifies the disasters and extreme weather events like in the case of the Philippines, where Typhoon Haiyan devastated the provinces of Samar and Leyte by causing severe flooding in 2013. This further leads to damages of properties and infrastructures, and worse, it also killed people and other living organisms. Glaciers, ice sheets are also melting in Antarctic and Greenland, with hotter temperature. There are also records of sea level rise. It also threatens species and poses threats like to polar bears that lives in sea of ice, but due to climate change, they lose their habitat. There will also be longer and more frequent drought events, especially in water-stressed regions. It also threatens food security due to changes in climate and also the occurrences of extreme weather events that destroy different food sources like crops, livestock, and fisheries. The urban area tend to become warmer compared to the neighboring rural areas or what we call urban heat island effect. Also, with high temperature, there are also associated risks in the physical health of people. Given these impacts of climate change, what can we do? Actually, we can do something. We can do mitigation and adaptation measures, so remember these two terms. Mitigation is when we reduce the greenhouse emissions and enhance the carbon sinks like trees. Adaptation, on the other hand, as defined by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change or IPCC, these are the adjustments to reduce the vulnerability of both natural and human systems against climate change effects. Tree planting activities are very common nowadays in the Philippines, but it doesn't end with that. It's more on tree growing that we make sure that these planted seeds or seedlings are being nurtured so that it can reach maturity and can better contribute in addressing climate change. Because plants and trees are carbon sinks, it facilitates carbon sequestrations. And as mentioned earlier, this process is what we call mitigation. What other mitigation measures can be done? We can start with our trash and waste in our household or office. We can reduce or minimize the amount of waste produced, like reducing paper waste. We can also reuse our tote bags, bayo, or any reusable bags when we go grocery shopping and any other activities. We can also recycle paper, plastics, cans, and metals, and we can also compost our food waste that helps in plant growth, but it also reduces waste. We can also recover energy from waste, generally known as waste to energy. An example of this is biogas, or renewable energy from animal and plant waste. And of course, landfill, which is the least preferred. We can also prohibit the use of plastics. In fact, there are already local government units in the Philippines that implement the no plastic policy or the banning of the use of unnecessary single-use plastics like in Los Baños, Laguna, El Nido, Palawan, and Baguio City, Benguet. So this movement in general would minimize the plastic waste that eventually go to our river systems, oceans, and other bodies of water. So as you can see, the role of policymakers is very crucial in addressing climate change. We can also reduce energy and electricity consumption, and we can also conserve water. We can also use windbreak or drought-tolerant species, and we can also diversify the planted crops for agricultural farms. Also, we can conduct or consider the climate resilient infrastructure as well as the consideration of multi-hazards in land use planning for residential areas, for example, and location of evacuation centers. And policymakers should also incorporate climate change adaptation into their mandated plans. So overall, we see that there is a strong set of evidence-based information on the impacts of climate change, indicating that it is certainly happening and undeniable. Thus, there is a call for urgency to undertake appropriate actions, the need to strengthen both mitigation and adaptation actions, the need for a concerted global efforts of all stakeholders at different levels, local, municipal, provincial, national, international, up to global scale, including policymakers, investors, communities, including us. So global actions are needed before the Earth hits the hard limits and becomes unadaptable. Thank you very much.